Hey guys, welcome to day 2 of Lemon Brown. Today we're going to get into the story, but before we do you remember back to show and tell back in elementary school? Well, in case you don't, I want to show you this little clip of show and tell.
I like football and basketball and soccer. Okay, then you're my man. Hi, camera.
Can someone explain what show and tell is?
Show and tell is where you bring a toy and show. That's why it's called showing it. And the tell part is that you tell them about it and they can ask questions. That's why it's called show and tell. Oh. Let's get started. Let's get started, people.
All right, everyone, close your eyes.
Open your eyes. This is one of my favorite toys. I named it Yellow Bear because it's yellow and it's a bear. Sometimes in the morning I play dress up with him and I dress it up. Open. I have these cars and this one I like to introduce because it's Lightning McQueen. It has one of my favorite colors, red and a little orange. Crystal. Does Lightning McQueen ever got broken? It has a rip sticker. This is Maynard. Who? Maynard. Maynard? Mater. You're saying Mamer. Maynard. How long have you had those toys? I got this one, I think, when I just turned.
Okay, hopefully that refreshed your memory on what show and tell was back in elementary school so that you just get kind of a feel for what I'm going to be asking you to do today. So, right now, before we get into Lemon Brown, I want to do a little warm up activity inside your classroom, okay? So, right now, take a look at this question. And I just want you to teachers just spend like maybe 3 to 5 minutes talking about this. So, what do you value? What objects are really important to you? So think about some objects that are really important to you. Try to go beyond like your cell phone and your game systems and things like that and really think about an object that's really important to you. And would your parents think or feel the same way that you do about that object? Do they value the same things that you do? So just think about that right now. Share a little bit in your crew. Just take about 3 to 5 minutes and then come on back. All right, now that you had a chance to just chat about that, let's talk about what's going to happen next week, Friday. So, next week, Friday, you're going to be giving a small little mini speech inside your crew, and you'll only be giving it to your crew. All right, so if you are a virtual student, you will have to video yourself giving this speech and upload that video to the assignment document. Let's take a look at what the assignment looks like. In the story of the treasure of Lemon Brown, we're going to learn about Lemon Brown's treasure, but I want to talk about your treasure. So take a look at this. This treasure speech will be inside your Google Classroom, but for right now, you can just look at this and follow along. You don't need to open it up. I just want you to start thinking about it so that you get some practice and you're ready for it next week. You're going to be giving a mini speech, 1 to 2 minutes, not very big, explaining the significance of something you treasure. Now, a treasure, it's an object, it's non living, so it's not going to be your dog. And it's something that you value. You're going to try and avoid things like your cell phones and your computers and your game systems and things like that. And really look for a treasure, something that has a meaning to you. Feel free to bring in your treasure as long as it's school appropriate as a visual aid, or you can take a picture of it and put it onto your document and project it onto the document camera, or even slide your cell phone underneath the document camera to show the class, because sometimes our treasures are things we don't want to bring into school. So, the format, you're going to begin with a strong lead, and then you're going to tell us about your treasure and explain how it became special to you. Down below, here's a little guide. You're going to use these questions, and it's okay if you can't answer every single question. They're there just to kind of help you and and come up with some ideas. You will be turning this document in after you've given your speech to your crew, so you don't turn it in until then. So take a look. You'll open with a strong lead, and there's some examples right down below. You're going to tell us what your object is, and maybe you'll tell us who gave it to you, how you got it, where it came from and when you received it. You might have a special place. Maybe it's a baseball and it's in a case and you keep it in a special place. And you're going to talk about why it's significant or important, why it's valuable to you. Or maybe you'll just share a memory that goes along with your treasure. But you're going to need to come up with a treasure, something that's important to you. And it could be the baby blanket that you've had your whole life. It could be that stuffed animal. It might be something your best friend gave you. It could be your Legos. So think about something that might be of value to you. It might even be a piece of clothing. I know my teenage daughter got a concert T-shirt from Imagine Dragons, and that's a treasure to her. So maybe you went to like a musical, like you went and saw Hamilton. So maybe you have some ticket stubs. So take a look at what do you have that's your treasure. So this might take a little time to think about it. You might have to brainstorm at home some ideas. So I'm just going to share with you mine today so that you get an idea. Here's some strong leads. You'd have to come up with a way that you would start your speech. You can't just start off and go, oh, this is my object. No, you need to have a way to talk to your audience. And so you could start off with, you may think that this baseball is a mere trifle, but it has significant, incredible significance. You might have a description of it was a cold November morning when I shot my award winning, my prize winning buck. And you might have a picture of your 12-point buck. You might start with a bold statement. The most important object in the world is right here in the palm of my hand. And maybe it's your SpongeBob bobblehead. It could be a question. What would I risk bodily harm to save? What do I prize most of all? And then you would go in to talk about what you prize most, what's your most treasured possession. Then there's a space for you on your document. There'll be a space for you to draft your speech. And this is just a draft. You don't have to read it when you get up there, but you can. Hopefully you don't read the whole thing. You might glance down. It might help you. It will give you something to practice from. So I wrote mine out just as a little practice guide to help me to figure out what I wanted to say and what I wanted my lead to be. So all those things would help me draft it up. So after I drafted that up, then it was time for me to give my speech. All right. And when you're all done giving your speech, you're going to do a quick reflection, and we'll go over what that reflection is a little bit more later on, but you're going to give yourself an evaluation. How did you do looking out at the audience, or did you just look down at your speech the whole time? Were you loud enough that your crew could hear you? Did you show some enthusiasm or some emotion? You didn't just sit there and go, "This is my treasure." Was your composure, were you comfortable, or were you kind of rocking back and forth because you were super nervous? And were you prepared? Did you come up here and really talk about your treasure and why it was so important to you? All right. And as a bonus, you can then put your treasure picture down below. So you're going to see my treasure right there. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to share my treasure speech with you. And today I put it on the screen so it'd make it nice and easy for you to see. Oops, there it went. All right. So let's take a look. This is my treasure speech. So if I were up front in front of the class and I was talking, I might put my rock underneath a document camera, or I might just have a picture of it and just project it. And then I would get started. I'd look out at my audience and I would start off saying, this may just look like a regular polished rock, something that anybody could own. But really, it's so much more than that. This polished rock was given to me from my grandmother, whom I had a very close relationship with. And she gave it to me at a time when I was super nervous. And she knew that I always got nervous very easily. And so she gave me this rock and she said, Beth Ann, this rock will help calm your nerves, and it'll bring you luck. And if you just put it in your pocket and carry it with you, it'll always do those things for you. So I've put that rock in my pocket many a times, and it's super smooth, so it's nice that I can just kind of rub the side of it, and it helps to calm me down. And it always reminds me of my grandmother, and it gives me just that little bit more confidence. And so my grandmother is no longer with me, but the rock still is. And someday I hope that maybe I could give it to my own kids and it would bring them just as much luck as it has brought me. And that would be the end of my speech. Now, if I were to look back at my actual treasure speech right here, I veered from the speech just a little bit, but it still basically got the same things accomplished. I still told you all about my treasure, and I had a lead. So now when I go down to evaluate myself, I would make sure that I really feel like I did a pretty good job. So I give myself some pretty good marks there. And I included a little picture there for a little bonus so we can see them because we won't be inside all of your crews and our virtual students, we don't get to see yours. So be sure and include those things. Know that this treasure speech is not happening until next week, Friday. They're only 1 to 2 minutes, they're very quick. And you will all get a chance to do your treasure speech and then turn these in. All right, today was just a little preview on your treasure speech. I just want you to start thinking about it. You'll have more time to actually write it up and practice with it, but I want you to start thinking about it. And so I thought the best way to do that is to show you what you needed to do. All right, we're going to get into our story now, okay? So just know that you'll have more time to work on your actual treasure speech coming up in the near future. So right now, what I need you to do, I need you to take out a sheet of paper. And once you get out the sheet of paper, I need you to basically just draw a great big line right down the middle of this sheet of paper. And we are going to be setting up our notes for the story, The Treasure of Lemon Brown. All right, let's do that. Okay, you're going to set your paper up similar to this chart that you see on your screen right now. So we're going to be taking notes as we go through and read our story, The Treasure of Lemon Brown. And our reading strategy is all about being able to make inferences. So we're going to start off on one side. You're going to write the detail. And on the other side, you're going to write the inference. What can you infer or understand based upon that detail? So you're just making this little chart to take some notes on, all right? And mine's going to be digital just because it has to be digital. So right now, have yours out in front of you. And I also am going to ask you to go into Google Classroom and when you get in there, find The Treasure of Lemon Brown, the story, because that's the only thing you really need opened. So I am going to go in here underneath classwork. Go to The Treasure of Lemon Brown and you'll see story, The Treasure of Lemon Brown. Go ahead and open that up and you will see this story popping up in front of you. And it says The Treasure of Lemon Brown. And then it says, what do you treasure? And we're actually going to scroll and roll down. You'll see Walter Dean Myers right here till we get to right here where it says The Treasure of Walter Dean Meyer, or The Treasure of Lemon Brown by Walter Dean Meyer. All right, we're just going to get started on this story today. We will finish it tomorrow. So today, as we get started with our story, The Treasure of Lemon Brown, we're going to read a little bit. Sometimes I'm going to read, sometimes you're going to read. I'm going to get us started basically, and you're going to have to take some notes as we go through. You're also going to have some assignments that go with this story. So it's important that you do take these notes and that you pay attention. And if you miss something, you go back and reread. All right, so let's get us started right here. The Treasure of Lemon Brown by Walter Dean Myers. The dark sky, filled with angry swirling clouds, reflected Greg Ridley's mood as he sat on the stoop of his building. His father's voice came to him again, first reading the letter the principal had sent to the house, then lecturing endlessly about his poor efforts in math. I had to leave school when I was 13, his father had said. That's a year younger than you are now. If I'd half the chances you have, I'd. Greg sat in the small, pale green kitchen listening, knowing the lecture would end with his father saying he couldn't play ball with the Scorpions. He had asked his father the week before, and his father had said it depended on his next report card. It wasn't often that the Scorpions took on new players, especially 14-year-olds, and this was a chance of a lifetime for Greg. He hadn't been allowed to play high school ball, which he really wanted to do, but playing for the community center team was the next best thing. Report cards were due in a week, and Greg had been hoping for the best. But the principal had ended the suspense early when she sent that letter saying Greg would probably fail math if he didn't spend more time studying. And you want to play basketball? His father's brows knitted over deep brown eyes. That must be some kind of a joke. Now, you just get into your room and hit those books. That had been 2 nights before. His father's words, like the distant thunder that now echoed through the streets of Harlem, still rumbled softly in his ears. It was beginning to cool, and gusts of wind made bits of paper dance between the parked cars. There was a flash of nearby lightning, and soon large drops of rain splashed onto his jeans. He stood to go upstairs, thought of the lecture that probably awaited him if he did anything except shut himself in his room with his math book. And he started walking down the street instead. Down the block, there was an old tenement that had been abandoned for some months. Some of the guys had held an impromptu checker tournament there the week before, and Greg had noticed that the door, once boarded over, had been slightly ajar. Pulling his collar up as high as he could, he checked for traffic and made a dash across the street. He reached the house just as another flash of lightning changed the night to day for an instant, and then returned to the graffiti scarred building to the grim shadows. He vaulted over the outer stairs and pushed tentatively on the door. It was opened, and he let himself in. All right, that's the first part of Lemon Brown. Let's take a look at some of the things that are going on here with Greg. The first thing you should have noticed is that Greg's in a little bit of trouble. Because why? Because he's failing math and he really wants to play ball. His dad is not too happy about it. And instead of studying, Greg takes off and goes into an old rundown tenement building. If you remember from Amigo Brothers, a tenement is an apartment building, and this one is a rundown one in the city streets of Harlem. All right, so let's take a look at our chart. The first thing I want to look at with you is on page 178. I want to talk about the lead, specifically about the dark sky and the angry swirling clouds. What can you infer about why the author would use that? If you were looking right here, what you can learn or take away, it's showing some tension in the mood. We've got some anger and gloom. So we've got that dark sky and angry swirling clouds, and all that is showing the tension or the mood. Go ahead and add that to your chart. All right, look at Greg's dad. He's not very happy. So let's talk about Greg's dad here. So Greg's dad, and we're looking at him on page 178. He talks about how he left school at 13 and all these different chances and things. What can you infer about Greg's dad? What kind of guy is he? What kind of life has he had? If you say that he had a tough childhood, you're right. What else could you infer about Greg's dad when he's yelling at him and he's not happy with things? I think I could infer that he wants better for his son. He's not yelling at him because he's mad, but he's not yelling at him just because he's mad. He's wanting his kid to have a better life and do better in school and have more opportunities than what he had. And right here that dad values education. All right, take a minute on this one. And what can you infer about Greg here on page 180? He takes off and goes in that tenement building when he's supposed to be upstairs studying. What can you infer about Greg here? All right, so take a minute and then jot down some response here. What can you infer about Greg based on the fact that he goes to the tenement instead of studying? So go ahead and jot a few things down there. All right, so you might have put something down about the fact that, Greg's being rebellious. He feels like his dad doesn't get him and Maybe he just wants to avoid his work, or it's showing that he's really immature by running away from his responsibility. I mean, if he really wants to play ball, then he's going to get his patootie up there and get working and studying. But instead, he takes off. So you might have something like that. It's okay if you don't have everything that I do, but you might have something along those lines. Let's keep going with the story because we're about to meet Lemon Brown. All right, I'm going to read, and as I read, we'll stop and then we'll talk about what can you infer about Lemon Brown based upon his description. All right, let's continue on in our story. The inside of the building was dark, except for the dim light that filtered through the dirty windows from the street lamps. There was a room a few feet from the door, and from where he stood at the entrance, Greg could see a squarish patch of light on the floor. He entered the room, frowning at the musty smell. It was a large room that might have been someone's parlor at one point in time. Squinting, Greg could see an old table on its side against one wall, what looked like a pile of rags or torn mattress in the corner, and a couch with one side broken in front of a window. He went to the couch. The side that wasn't broken was comfortable enough, though a little creaky. From the spot, he could see the blinking neon sign over the bodega on the corner. He sat a while watching the sign blink first green, then red, allowing his mind to drift to the scorpions and then to his father. His father had been a postal worker for all of Greg's life, and he was proud of it, often telling Greg how hard he had worked to pass that test. Greg had heard the story too many times to be interested now. For a moment, Greg thought he heard something that sounded like scraping against the wall. He listened carefully, but it was gone. Outside, the wind had picked up, sending the rain against the wind with a force that shook the glass in its frame. A car passed, its tires hissing over the wet street, and its red taillights glowing in the darkness. Greg thought he heard the noise again. His stomach tightened as he held himself still and listened intently. There weren't any more scraping noises, but he was sure he had heard something in the darkness. Something breathing. He tried to figure out just where the breathing was coming from. He knew it was in the room with him. Slowly he stood, tensing. As he turned, a flash of lightning lit up the room, frightening him with its sudden brilliance. He saw nothing, just the overturned table, the pile of rags, and an old newspaper on the floor. Could he have just been imagining the sounds? He continued listening, but heard nothing, and thought that it just might have been rats. Still, he thought as soon as the rain let up, he'd leave. He went to the window and was about to look out when he heard a voice behind him. "Don't try nothing, 'cause I got a razor here sharp enough to cut a week into 9 days." Greg, except for an involuntary tremor in his knees, stood stock still. The voice was high and brittle, like twigs being broken, surely not one he had ever heard before. There was a shuffling sound as the person who had been speaking moved a step closer. Greg turned, holding his breath, his eyes straining to see in the dark room. The upper part of the figure before him was still in darkness. The lower half was in the dim triangle of light that fell unevenly from the window. There were 2 feet in cracked, dirty shoes from which rose legs that were wrapped in rags. "Who are you?" Greg hardly recognized his own voice. "I'm Lemon Brown," came the answer. "Who are you?" "Greg Ridley." "What you doing here?" The figure shuffled forward again, and Greg took a small step backward. "It's raining," Greg said. "I can see that," the figure said. The person who called himself Lemon Brown peered forward, and Greg could see him clearly. He was an old man. His black, heavily wrinkled face was surrounded by a halo of crinkly white hair and whiskers that seemed to separate his head from the layers of dirty coats piled on his smallish frame. His pants were bagged to the knee, where they were met with rags that went down to the old shoes. The rags were held on with strings, and there was a rope around his middle. Greg relaxed. He had seen this man before, picking through the trash on the corner and pulling clothes out of the Salvation Army box. There was no sign of the razor that could cut a week into 9 days. "What are you doing here?" Greg asked. "This is where I'm staying," Lemon Brown said. "What you here for?" "Told you it was raining out," Greg said, leaning back against the back of the couch until he felt it give slightly. "Ain't you got no home?" I got a home, Greg answered. You ain't one of them bad boys looking for my treasure, is you? Lemon Brown cocked his head to one side and squinted one eye. 'Cause I told you I got me a razor. I'm not looking for your treasure, Greg answered, smiling. If you have one. What do you mean, if I have one? Lemon Brown said. Every man got a treasure. Don't you know that? You must be a fool. Sure, Greg said as he sat on the sofa and put one leg over the back. What do you have, gold coins? Don't you worry none about what I got, Lemon Brown said. You know who I am? You told me your name was Orange or Lemon or something like that. Lemon Brown, the old man said, pulling back his shoulders as he did so. They used to call me Sweet Lemon Brown. Sweet Lemon? Greg asked. Yes, sir. Sweet Lemon Brown. They used to say I sung the blues so sweet that if I sang at a funeral, the dead would commence to a rockin' with the beat. Used to travel all over Mississippi and as far as Macon, Louisiana, and east on over to Macon, Georgia. You mean you ain't never heard of Sweet Lemon Brown? All right, let's take a look. What I want you to do now is what can you tell me about Lemon Brown based on the description on page 181? Once you've done that, I want you to tell me what can you infer about Lemon Brown when he says every man's got a treasure. You don't know that? You must be a fool. And then one more time, Lemon Brown. What can you infer about him on page 182 when he talks about who he is? All right, so I'm going to ask you now to end the hour filling these in. Feel free to talk amongst people in your crew, come up with some different insight, and we will pick this back up together tomorrow. Bye, guys.